everybody. Thank you very much, everyone. Happy Friday. Well, today, Andy Burnham unveiled Number 10 North.
Thank you, everybody. I cannot tell you what a proud moment this is. I think this might be the best day of my life.
The best day of his life, really. Not his wedding day, not the day his kids were born. I don't find that very believable. They've given it a logo as well. So have you seen the logo for Number 10 North? Right, well, we want to hear it. I think we can bring that up on the screen there. Oh, wonder how long it took them to come up with that. Oh, my gosh, hours and hours of work have gone into that. I wonder which crack team of graphic designers were paid for it. But we've actually done our own, inspired by what Andy Burnham said his favourite biscuit was. He was asked what his favourite biscuit was, and he said, I don't really eat biscuits. I just like chips and gravy. And here is what we think it should be, the logo of Number 10 North. Just loads of chips and gravy. There you go. That should be his thing, shouldn't it, really? I mean, you're welcome, Andy. You can have that one for free. But Burnham was filmed. He was rolling into Number 10 North. Here he is. I think he clearly thought it looked a bit like this. He obviously thought that he was like notorious gangster Tommy Shelby from the BBC show Peaky Blinders. But what Andy Burnham was probably less keen for you all to know was this. He flew there, didn't he? He flew from London to Glasgow, then to Manchester. He took a 38-minute flight there. What will that have cost us? It's ridiculous. And what would Ed Miliband have to say about it?
No, that's wrong.
Said they're probably on the same plane, someone said. But on that issue of cost, what is Number 10 North going to cost us? Well, tens of millions of pounds, apparently. And what will it achieve? Well,
we'll take power out of here and carry it into every postcode in the land.
Good growth in every postcode.
Drives good growth in every postcode.
Good growth in every postcode, hope in every heart.
Good growth in every postcode, hope in every heart. But, of course, it's about that idea about bringing power back to not just Manchester, but the North in general, local councils, etc. So will he give them powers to tackle illegal immigration? No, obviously not. Of course he won't. They wheeled out Angela Rayner to defend it.
What we're seeing is the growth in Greater Manchester is outstripping that of national growth. And that's because they've got more devolution and more power in the local area.
Unfortunately, Manchester has actually seen the biggest drop in living standards of anywhere in England, so I'm not too sure she knows what she's on about that. And analysis released this evening by the Taxpayers Alliance claims that the Number 10 North Vanity Squad will cost the taxpayers £872,404 a year just in staffing costs. You've got a videographer there, a social video lead, a senior motion designer, head of social creative and production, social producer. They are turning it just into an influencer hotspot. It's going to look like Dubai, isn't it? People there just taking TikToks of themselves all the time. Look, I want to know, will it work? Is it a waste of time and money? And I'm looking forward to getting the views of the audience on this as well, how they feel about this whole thing. Right, OK, so Christy, let me go to you first on this. How do you feel about the Number 10 North thing?
I think that it is completely and utterly pointless. What is the point? Who asked for it? Who wanted it? What has the North done to deserve Angela Rayner being there full time? Why were you going to have a go at me then?
I thought you were going to slag off the North again. You've done that before. There was a show where you managed to alienate basically all of our audience.
Yes, and that's one of my proudest shows. Thank you very much indeed. No, I think that, it being the happiest day of his life, the day he arrived in the North, is very, very nice. It was the happiest day of mine when I left. But, thank you very much.
It is. I knew it was coming.
I don't understand. Why do we, by the way, get a £2 bus fare and he gets a £30,000 jet? That's what I want to know. And who actually asked for this? It is all just performative nonsense. It's fine that things are run from London as long as other parts of the country are considered. The idea that we have to have... And did you see the building? It looks like some really just grim middle management type of place where people who used to compete in the Krypton Factor normally used to work. So I'm sorry, I just think it's pointless. I think it's just performative, and I think that no one has asked for it and no one wants the money that's going to be spent on it.
OK, all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
I mean, I do want to make it clear, as someone who's from Manchester, I am not against the idea of, in theory, Manchester having more power and all of this stuff. It's just the fact that we don't know what he's going to do.
Why does Manchester need more power? Why does Manchester need to have, say,
well, not just Manchester. It's places like... Because it's supposed to be a symbol for other places as well. Like, for example, I went and did a show from a place called Stanley in County Durham. That is a place that has been completely and utterly forgotten. Former mining town, people living up there, they don't get any real representation at all from Westminster. They're just a complete afterthought and all of that. But so I do feel they are. I'm sorry, but they are. There's no representation. So I am in favour of there at least being a nod and a wink to it. But Anna, go on. You're making a reaction there. It doesn't seem that it's really got any direct function yet.
So this is a complete insult to every MP that lives anywhere other than London and Manchester, because what he's effectively saying is that if you represent Durham or Newcastle or the South West or Southend, where I used to represent, you are not capable of making your case and getting things for your patch. I'm afraid that is absolutely untrue. MPs worth their salt, that's their job. To lobby in Westminster, to go to find those ministers, to make your case and to get the resources and the investment into your patch. And I don't agree with you, Patrick, that the MPs for Durham didn't do that. There was plenty of cash that was going up to Durham. But what I think about Burnham is he is the absolute king of style over substance. He's like the candy floss Prime Minister. Great big, looks lovely, pink. The moment you take a bite of it, you realise there's nothing there. He's completely an empty vessel. We have massive problems facing this country and the world. We've got an energy crisis fueled by two wars, one in Europe and one in the Middle East. We've got a borders crisis right here in the UK. We've got a debt crisis and we've got a defence crisis. What has Andy Burnham said about any of that? Absolutely nothing. And opening a building in Manchester is pathetic. It's not a building that makes a difference. It's the decisions that the Prime Minister makes, and he isn't making any, is he?
Hello. Now, do you have concerns that the government want to impact every area of your life? There was a time when the state did what it needed to do, took a little bit of our money from our income and provided good public services. And that was pretty much the remit. Not anymore. It can feel like we're living in an age of increased censorship, in two-tier policing. And this can also play into the freedoms that we have with our money. You might be worried that the government could debank you if your face doesn't fit or you say the wrong thing. So is there potentially a solution? I'm joined now by the founder and CEO of Tally Money, Cameron Parry.
We've been in a just over 51-year experiment now with fiat currency, where our monetary systems that have been at national level haven't been anchored to anything. So there's no accountability in the number of units of currency that can be issued, because there's no asset anchoring it to anything. And also the people making those decisions don't bear any consequences to their decision making. And so they can arbitrarily inflate the money supply, maybe support fashionable policies that are at least fashionable in Westminster but don't make a lot of sense to people outside of that bubble. I'm not going to think of a couple off the top of my head. We need to have a choice. We need to be able to be in something else, because up until now, pretty much for all of our lives, we've had a singular state-run currency that we've relied on. Unfortunately, I feel for the last couple of decades at least, that reliance and the credit of that has been used up for purposes that aren't necessarily to do with our benefit. Being the earner of the money. I've already paid my tax. When my money goes into my bank account, I shouldn't be getting taxed more through inflation. And and it certainly shouldn't be in some form weaponized against me to, through debanking or through programming money and what I'm permitted to spend it on. Like, you can forget that for an idea.
Couldn't agree more. Cameron Parry, good to see you.
Thanks, Bev.
To find out more and to get an exclusive GB News offer, simply scan the QR code or click the link in the description.
Okay, all right, good stuff. Can we bring back up that picture from the Taxpayers Alliance? So I want to put this to our Andy, actually, who's here tonight. So it's this Taxpayers Alliance thing where they basically figured out what jobs were on offer. There you go, so it's on your screens right now. That is basically a load of TikTok influencers, isn't it, who appear to be based in Manchester.
Yeah, I think it's the first round of hiring. I mean, you've got to communicate with the audience. You know, so many people get their news, they would understand government announcements from TikTok, from Facebook, from Instagram, from social media.
Andy,
so you've got to hire for it. I'm sure that they will be hiring other people
Andy,
there. You know,
what is your evidence?
This is good.
What is your evidence for saying that people in Southend get all their news from TikTok and from influencers?
I didn't say that everyone in Southend on scene.
You said everyone.
Their news from, I said lots of people, actually. I mean, if we can roll back the Take the Viewers at home,
you've got no
hit that
evidence
back
for saying
15
that,
seconds.
have you?
Lots of people do get their news from TikTok. I mean, what are we doing? No one gets their news from Facebook and TikTok. I think number 10 in the North is good. You know, Rishi Sunak opened the Darlington Treasury campus. That's seen as a pretty good success. They moved quite a lot of quangos like the ONS data analysis to Bristol. That's seen as not a great success. But I think moving government bodies outside of London so that talent outside of London can contribute to government is a good thing. And I think if we're crying about this, it's just a bit snowflakey, to be honest.
Go on then. Are you a snowflake?
Absolutely right, I am. Because I'm unique like everyone else. I think this is... Anna's right that with the level of crises that the country is facing, right? £3 trillion in debt, right? I've spent all evening trying to explain to everybody how enormous that is. The fact that we spend £100 billion every single year just to service our debt. Not to pay it down, but just to keep paying it. And that number gets bigger every single year. That is much more than we spend on defence. I think it's more now than we spend on education. Has he mentioned any of this at all? No. Is this stuff going to add to it? Of course it is. It's not going to touch the sides, obviously, paying a few people to film Andy Burnham talking about postcodes, whatever it is he cares about. But you've got that kind of problem. You've got the kind of defence problems that we've got, where the Russians were able to sail boats all the way through the English Channel, and we had almost nothing to counter them. These are really serious problems. And Andy Burnham is talking about buses, and he's talking about having a serviced office building in Manchester. This is, to me, actually quite terrifying. And we can make all the jokes we want. I can make the point that if you look at that number 10 North, the zero looks completely wrong. So whoever there has done that has done a terrible job. But I think it's to lose the wood for the trees that you've got a guy who is just a deeply unserious person who is scared to face any kind of accountability from Parliament or even proper journalists, other than the footballer who sells crisps. And we are sailing into a debt crisis and a defence crisis. And I think this is much more serious than anybody wants to acknowledge.
Can I ask a question, right? Because, I understand. I actually get that you might want to hire some social media people to get your message out. But surely the people you want to hire first are policymakers, and then you go, right, OK, now we've got policies, now we've actually got some substance, then we'll hire some people to put the message out.
In fairness, there has been a pretty substantive relocation scheme offered to policy advisors in London. That policy advisors and general managers in the suburbs. There has been a pretty extensive relocation scheme already offered, to be fair.
So ministers are invariably MPs as well, right? So as Anna said, they represent their own patch. They spend 4 days a week or something in a government department in London, and then most of them, unless they're a member of the Lords, they will go back to their constituency and they will spend the day hearing about concerns from their constituents. They've actually got a better understanding of what's happening out there in the country, frankly, than lots of the civil servants and all the rest of the people who are stuck in either London or in one of these big relocation centres. Ministers also go on lots of visits, so you can go and see all these kinds of people, but the only thing you will see is the inside of a car, or if you're Andy Burnham, the inside of a jet, and you'll be whisked from one place to another, and for either, in Andy Burnham's case now, security reasons or others, you're not going to be sitting like your Tommy Shelby out in the mud hearing about real people or actually going down mines and doing a hard day's work. So the whole thing is just a total PR exercise that you could get from doing a day trip anyway, and all the rest of this stuff of just carting everybody back up and down the M6 is a complete waste of time. And I'm sure that our enemies in China and Russia and Iran are laughing at us.
Exactly. And I'd actually like to ask you a quick question. How many of you think that this is just because Andy Burnham likes Manchester, he's been the mayor of Manchester, his family are in Manchester, and he doesn't actually want to go very far to work? How many people think that is what this is all about?
Manchester is not the seat of government.
Exactly.
OK. Someone, you might not pick that up on the mic. Someone said Manchester is not the seat of government.
And that was the majority of the audience.
It was, yeah. Can I just read it? Because I want to put this to Andy, actually. So, a government spokesperson said, and this is about the use of the private jet, OK? Government aircraft are used in line with the ministerial code and long-standing rules governing official travel. The government will always seek to ensure ministers can carry out their duties effectively while delivering value for money for taxpayers. As with previous administrations, appropriate transport is used where necessary to meet operational, security and scheduling requirements. So that private jet trip, we think, cost somewhere in the region of about 30 grand. Then he's announced just shy of £1 million worth of social media influencers are going to work at number 10 North, plus the fact that that thing itself is going to cost tens of millions of pounds. And then we've had the VAT scrapping on some energy bills that was unfunded.
Yep.
And then we've found out about the bus fare thing, which is going to cost about 100 million quid.
300 million quid.
300 million quid.
Slashing VAT on pubs as well, of course, making sure that our pubs
which is going to save pubs. Right, so what is that saving pubs? £20 a week?
No, they've slashed VAT by 20% on pubs, and they're making sure that, the quite dodgy American candy shops and vape shops are going to take the brunt for it. I'd rather have a pub on my high street than an American candy shop. I don't know about the audience here. I don't like American candy as much as like a pint of,
But Andy,
lots of pint of gin.
Who's paying for a lot of
Who is
stuff?
going to pay for this?
Well, I just said the American shops and vape
for
shops are going to have their business rates increased and their VAT increased.
Yeah.
It's quite clear in the policy.
Which is a total mess, right? The idea of fiddling around with VAT, because there are now so many exemptions on it that if you've got a decent accountant, you can get around these kind of rules. What you want is a simpler tax code overall, because then you can spread that burden out, and everybody who works in a small business will understand this. I can see some nodding in the audience already. You want a simpler code, then you'll be able to get more money, and less money will be spent on those fancy accountants. But all this is losing the wood for the trees. I think you're about to ask, where is all this money coming from? And we're not being told that, because Andy Burnham is a coward. He doesn't want to tell everybody.
Christy, dressed in an accountant here, is about to...
Don't you slag off my dress sense. I really don't think you're in a position, Andy. But secondly...
beautiful in
Can I just ask, £30,000 it cost him to take the plane?
We think roughly, yeah.
Oh, it's cheaper than the train, that's why.
Yeah, there you go. That's the other thing. Apparently, so we've got to go here now, but apparently the meeting that he had in there eventually with some of these different mayors was actually delayed because people's trains were late as well, which is the classic, isn't it? Maybe they could focus more on that. But anyway.
A man steps off a private jet, having spent roughly £30,000 of taxpayer money to fly from London to Manchester via Glasgow. Yes, via Glasgow, because apparently the shortest distance between 2 points is now a triangle, and declares it the best day of his life. Not his wedding, not the birth of his children, a logo unveiling. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to number 10 North. So, what exactly is number 10 North? Officially, it is Andy Burnham's flagship symbol of devolution, a Manchester outpost meant to bring power closer to the north. Unofficially, it looks suspiciously like an influencer studio with a Union Jack sticker slapped on it. We are talking videographers, motion designers, a head of social creative, costing nearly £900,000 a year in staffing alone. That is not a government office, that's a TikTok agency with delusions of grandeur. Now, here is where it gets properly interesting, because while the branding team was dizzy picking fonts, nobody seemed able to answer the actual question. What powers does this office hold? Which decisions move north? Who signs off and on what? Silence. Total echoing silence. It is decentralisation as vibe, not as policy. And here is the sleight of hand worth watching closely. While cameras focused on ribbon cuttings in Manchester, the national picture kept quietly falling apart. National debt sitting north of £3 trillion, roughly 100 billion a year just servicing that debt before a single pothole gets filled. Energy bills climbing, borders creaking, even Russian naval vessels casually cruising through the English Channel, seemingly unbothered. Meanwhile, the headline story is a chips and gravy logo. To be fair, there is a genuine case buried underneath all the glitter. Towns like Stanley in County Durham really have been neglected for decades, and symbolic investment in the north is not inherently a bad instinct. Even critics on the panel conceded that much. The problem is not the idea of decentralisation. The problem is theatre standing in for substance, a shiny wrapper around an empty box. So here is the real question worth sitting with. When politics becomes more about the launch video than the legislation, more about the aesthetic than the accountability, what exactly are we voting for? Style or substance? spectacle, or scrutiny. Because trust does not erode quietly, it collapses loudly the moment people notice the emperor's logo has no policy behind it. Thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.